anyone. I do not endorse any candidate here. There may be other candidates here, and you can let us know if you are here. And I am doing this to fulfill my duty as a spiritual leader within the community, not only that I pastor in, but I was raised in, born and raised. You know, I really don't need this paper. This is not, again, like I said, we're not endorsing any candidate. But we're in a situation where our communities are being torn down and burnt down. We're in a situation where our communities are being destroyed, not just from inside, but even from outside. We're in a situation where the public servants that are supposed to be serving us, instead of serving us, it seems like they're running races against us to stop us from succeeding. So right now, we are at a place where we need to understand what is the purpose for our public safety. What is the purpose for those leaders and for those who are in places of authority? What is their what design do they have to help us succeed? What design do they have to help our community overcome even this COVID problem? Not just that, the killings and the crime that is in our cities. We are having people killed on a day-to-day basis, and there's no situation that is worse than murder. I did a prayer vigil last night for my nephew, and I still hurt from that because people are still running loose here in our community right now. And people are totally scared to stand up and tell who it is that they know who it is. What have we designed for people to be able to tell without being scared that if they tell somebody in the law enforcement, their name is going to be out on the street? So I come today for a public safety forum. And I'm just, I'm really belittled because I was attacked on my website and also on my personal site, saying that I was out of order and that I couldn't hold this. Well, I stand to tell you today that I've been a soldier on the battlefield half my life, ever since I can remember, most of my life. I'm on the battlefield for the Lord now. So anything you get out of me right now is because the Lord put me here. Not the public, as far as government, but the people here. My family, my church family, the congregation that I pastor, the people I know all my life in this community. I've been in this community all my life, not a brick has changed on one building. From First Street out. Something's wrong with that picture. We got too much killing. We got too much, no economical power. There's something wrong. And we come to talk today to try to see, can we be on a neutral ground and try to find what can we do to better our community. Our babies' lives are at stake, y'all. Not just black children, white children, Mexican children, all children's lives are at stake right now. And we've got to stand up and we've got to represent. Those people that are in public service, they ought to work for us. We're not to work for them. There's no way in the world that you are in public service and you come down and make it hard for me to succeed. You should come down and make it easy for us to succeed. Don't come down and make it hard for us. From code enforcement to all other issues. You come, you make it hard for us to succeed. Your job is to help us to succeed, not to come in and put shackles on us that you know that we can't even afford to do. It makes no sense. Now we've got to do something about this. I don't care about the news channel. I don't care about any of that. I'm not the speaker publicly as far as this is concerned. I'm a Baptist preacher though. And I know what God is able to do. I just want the people to have a fair chance to survive these storms that we're going through. And I'm going to leave it with this because I'm going to introduce our moderator. I've got to get this out of the way. I've got to get this out of the way before I pray, because I couldn't follow this sheet. I'm sorry about it. But they're talking about where does the church stand on Black Lives Matter. Well, the church stands on all lives matter. All lives matter. That's where we stand. That's where I stand as a pastor. All lives matter. But I do want you to understand, when you tap into social injustice, now you see a different picture. You see that people of color, brown people, Mexican people, black people are being targeted. When you go up to City Hall and you stand in that courtroom at 8 o'clock for traffic violations, and you count what's there, 97% will be black and Mexicans. 2% will be whites. I'm not saying all whites are racist. I'm not saying all blacks are racist. What I'm saying is we got to fix this issue. We've got to make it fair all the way across the board. Our babies' lives are at stake. My child, he loves black and white and Mexican. He goes to Piper High School. My backyard is full of every color you can name. They love each other. If that generation right now took over, we'd be in a good place. If that generation that's his age, he's just turned 16, if they took over, we would be in one good place, y'all. But this mess that we got going on now, we've got to fix it. Our babies are dying. Most holy and all wise, everlasting God, thou was the creator of heaven and earth. We come before your presence upon today, ask that you would govern this meeting. We ask that you would govern this public safety forum and open ears, have attentive ears to hear what thus is said. And Lord, I pray that you would cover all of us in this room, from the crown of our heads unto the soles of our feet. Master, we ask that this will be a friendly meeting, and a meeting that will open up some doors and allow us to prepare ourselves for the corridors that we are about to walk through. Because now we see that you are doing a new thing. And you already told us that when we pass through the waters, they will not overwhelm us. So right now, Master, we just come before your presence today saying thank you. Thank you for your grace and your mercy. And we stand on Psalms 1 when it says, blessed the man that walk not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the law of the Lord. We just want to hold up on you today, Lord, and ask that you would be present in this meeting. In the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen, amen, and amen. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to the moderator. Our moderator will be Nathaniel Barnes.
All right. Let's give Pastor Jameson just a hand clap. And he said all of that and gave me some strict rules. And stay within this boundary. And I'm going to do that. I've been trying to stay out of sight, out of the way and everything. And he called me up, and just as he talked to you guys, he talked to me in the same fashion, telling me what I needed to do. But I have done my best to say, I don't want to bother nobody. I don't want nobody to bother me. But guess what? They've been bothering me too. And I hadn't been bothering anybody. And it came to me with a very interesting thing that we need to do something in our community. He made his pitch to me, and that's how I arrived here. But as he was talking to me, I was watching the funeral of Uncle John Lewis, and how he was talking about good trouble. And you know, sometimes you try to stay out of trouble, and trouble will find you. Regardless of how hard you try, trouble will find you. And I am one of those individuals that was lost to trouble, and for some reason, it began to find me. And then it triggered a thought in my mind that, yes, somebody needs to do something. And as I was saying, somebody needs to do something, I was looking in the mirror. Somebody needs to do something. And so when he pitched the idea about public safety, and he started talking about public safety, I brought up some issues to him, and then I said, there are some things that are systemic in this community. And a lot of it has to do with the public safety and our approach to it. And I'm glad that he said that all lives matter. But I'm a guy that can't stand dirty dishes, right? And my wife, she takes advantage of me for that, because she never has to wash dishes because I can't stand to see dirty dishes in the sink. But I take that same stance when it comes to my community. We got a lot of dirty dishes in Wyandotte County. And somebody needs to wash them. And so we need to roll up our sleeves and prepare our hands to wash those dirty dishes that we see. And that's why we find ourselves here on today, is to deal with the dirty dishes of Wyandotte County. And one of them being public safety and public safety issues. We do have some other candidates here. We want to let you know that we'll give you a chance to speak, but we have an agenda that they've expressed that I must follow. And so I will do that, but let's give these candidates a round of applause before I even introduce them. Let's clap for them, please. And I tell you, running for public office, it will, when I say running, when you're running, it'll take every piece of everything that you got inside of you. So I honor you, individuals that are here, that are in office, and ones that are running for office, so I know what it takes in order for you to do what you're going to do. So it says the forum format, the rules are as follows. This is a 90-minute total duration for the forum. It is divided into 6 15-minute segments, and we will explore the following topics. Criminal justice reform. Do you believe there's a systemic racism in Wyandotte County government? And if so, how do you address that? And so, Madam Organizer, we're going to give each individual
2 minutes.
2 minutes to respond to that. And even if you're not, I know, first of all, any other candidates in the room? So raise your hand.
This is not about candidates. This
Okay.
is about public safety,
No, sir.
right?
Okay. I just want to recognize them if you're in the room. Okay, thank you. All right, so criminal justice reform. Do you believe that there is a systemic racism problem in Wyandotte County government? And if so, how do you address that? Who wants to go first? All right, and give your name and the office.
Okay, this is on. My name is Christiane Bryant, and I'm running for Wyandotte County District Attorney. To answer the question, well, first of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here. I really do appreciate it. And to answer your question, I think there is systemic racism in the government and the justice system in Wyandotte County, and I think that's inherent across the country. I think the way that laws have been set in place, the way that governments have been structured, have made things very difficult for people of color over the years. And specifically here in Wyandotte County, I think we've been incredibly slow to change. I can speak specifically to the justice system because that's where my experience lies. We've been behind the times on certain reforms, and I think we're still behind the times because we do not treat every similarly situated individual consistently. There needs to be changes on the base level of how cases are handled in our justice system, how they're charged, and how they move through the system to make sure that that process is fair to everyone. One of the ways we start is consistent charging practices. The second way that we need to change that is by reforming the way that we work with cash bond here in Wyandotte County. We should not be allowing nonviolent, low-level offenders to sit in our county jail for months and months and months on nonviolent felonies. The problem is when that happens, just because somebody can't pay enough money to get out of jail, they lose their job, they lose their housing, they lose their transportation, they lose access to their family and their children, and it sets them way behind when they're finally released. And then they have all these financial and social barriers to get back on their feet and become a productive community member again. That's one of the key areas that impacts people here, and that's one of the key things that we need to change. The court system actually sets the bond, but the district attorney's office has a real say in how that works and how the processes happen. And I think that's one way we need to change that. Just that gateway to the justice system needs to be more fair. It's very difficult to take on a system that's been in place for years and years and years, but it's those little day-to-day steps that actually make a difference in getting us to the right place where we need to be to make things more fair. And frankly, it's going to take years to be more progressive and move forward, but it's those little day-to-day changes that make a big difference.
Thank you.
Thank you for allowing us to be here, and likewise, I want to make sure that Pastor Jameson and your church, I appreciate you for putting this on. Concerning the question, do I believe that there is systematic racism in Wyandotte County? Absolutely. I was born and raised in this community, and I not only have I read about the system and the problems in the system, as a minister and a pastor in this community for over 25 years, I've seen the effects of those systematic problems. People of color in this community, and not just people of color, but I make it clear, I call it the 3 Bs, black, brown, and broke folks. Because if you're disenfranchised and you don't have money, you're still going to be negatively affected by this criminal justice system because you don't have the funds to take care of what you need to take care of for. Right now in Wyandotte County, if you don't have funds to hire a lawyer, you're going to be appointed a lawyer. If you're appointed a lawyer, Wyandotte County doesn't have a public defender's office. You're going to be appointed a private attorney who will then take your case, and guess what? Your case is going to be the last one they deal with after all of the cases that they're already getting paid to deal with. This is part of the systematic problems. These are problems that Wyandotte County has had for decades, and no one has ever tried to deal with them. I will agree with Christiane that it's a very difficult thing to take on an entire system, and Lord knows, in the last 3.5 years, I have found that out. Because people who have benefited from the system and the flaws of the system do not like change and do not want change because it does not benefit them. One of the things that we have taken on since we've gotten in office is looking at the output of the system. So we've connected with the Vera Institute, which is a national organization who looks at and studies governments such as Wyandotte County. And so we brought them into the Wyandotte County District Attorney's Office to look at our charging policy, to look at the things that we have done right and have done wrong. And we gave them over 5 years of our charging information along with the plea negotiations that we have done so that we can have an outside independent agency take a look at the practices that have been going on for decades. And what we have found is that the vast majority of the people that the Wyandotte County District Attorney's Office has charged are predominantly African American and Hispanic. Now here's the issue. The issue is Wyandotte County is one of the most diverse counties in the nation. And so we have a huge amount of Caucasian, a huge amount of Hispanic, and a huge amount of African American. But why is it that at times from the 90s all the way up until 2017, a vast majority of the people that are prosecuted are African American and Hispanic? It would lead one to believe then that Caucasians do not commit crime, or at least not on the same level. Until we accept, one, the analysis and the basis that there is a problem, and acknowledge that, yes, that racism is there, and there is a problem. Why is it that the District Attorney's Office is getting disproportionately more charging for African American and Hispanic than anybody else? Until we accept that that's a problem, then we can never resolve and come up with a solution. And the issue is, for decades, we have refused to acknowledge that that is a problem and refused to deal with that. We have done that in this administration by partnering with the Vera Institute, by looking at bail reform, by making sure that every case that we deal with is looked at on an individual basis because every case is fact specific. And so to put on a one-shoe-fit-all across the board definitely disproportionately affect minorities more than the majority.
Thank you for that. We have one more question related with this to some degree, and then we have questions coming in from social media, which she'll be bringing to me, and then we have a question that was given to us. Somebody, they had written it down as they come in. You have those?
Did I give it, you have the
No.
copy?
No, I have those right now. And so we're going to go into the second part of that. Now, I think to allow me to just make a statement in between these questions, but, when we talk about systemic problems within our government system, and we're talking about criminal justice right now, Pastor Jameson mentioned the fact that you go to the courthouse on Wednesday morning on the second floor in the courtroom, and you'll see 97% of those people are there that are people of color, and then you'll see that 80% of those are property traffic violations. And when I was in public office, I noticed that 80% of those came from certain zip codes, and nobody speeds in Piper. They only speed in 102 and 104 and 101, and that's what the court was made of. So statistical information makes a difference, and so we have no mechanism at City Hall to gather that information to say, look at me now. City Hall needs that mirror image to say, this is what we look like, and this is what we're doing, and this is the pattern that's taking place. And so hopefully, as we speak, whoever will give you that insight. And it's not just the murders in the streets. It's not just the people that robbed the bank. It's for those people that are robbing the people. And sometimes it goes unnoticed because of the entity that's doing it. And wrong is wrong, whether it's being done by individuals or whether it's being done by our government. So we had a follow-up question. Okay. I'm going to have to go through these and pick out what's in reference to this 15-minute segment, but say, how will my identity be protected if I am a victim of crime? How will my identity be protected if I am a victim of crime?
So, and forgive me, ladies first, you go right ahead.
Well, if you are a victim of crime and the case is prosecuted, your identity is ultimately disclosed because of our mandatory discovery obligations as prosecutors. And I know that's always a significant concern for individuals who are victims of crime. It makes it scary for them to report. But it's one of those things that we have a legal obligation that we have to provide all of the evidence to the defense attorney. One thing that Kansas does provide for us in the actual judicial system is that we can redact personal identifiers. And in Wyandotte County, where it was, when I was here, we did not disclose that personal information to defendants. It just got disclosed to defense attorneys. As far as identifiers, social security numbers, addresses, that type of information. But if you are a witness or a victim of a crime, your identity will be disclosed if there's a prosecution due to that obligation. However, there are programs that I believe can be put in place to help. I know there's federal grants right now that I'm really interested in that assist with witness relocation and those type of things that I think we need to look at in Wyandotte County, because that fear in individuals who are victimized in our community has a chilling effect. And that means that people are afraid to call the police and report when a crime happens. And that undermines our community safety as a whole. The other issue is that if somebody reports a crime and then that case is pled way down or dismissed after it's charged and their information is out on the street, they're terrified because the person that victimized them is back out on the street. They know their name, they know there was a report made. And that's why we need to make careful and calculated charging decisions, and we need to make fair and reasonable plea offers if that's the way the case goes, with the victim being fully informed of what's going on, so that they understand the process and they know what's going into the case and why the outcome is the way it is. But we cannot charge cases to turn around and dismiss them and put the victim in danger.
So there's a couple of things. One, as she stated, you can redact. Not only can you redact, but you have the ability to request that certain files are sealed so that you can protect witnesses and victims. Because the reality is, across the country, but absolutely here in this county, there is indeed a fear. I literally recall a case where an individual was murdered in front of 4 people. And when they called the police, all 4 of these individuals spoke to the police, vowed to come and tell the truth about what they saw. And when it came down, the system takes 6 months to a year to get to the process, to the preliminary hearing where the witnesses were to come and give their testimony. all four of those witnesses were afraid for their lives. Now, the person who had committed the crime, we believe, was locked up. But they were so afraid to come and testify that they refused to show up. I put them in jail. Asked the court, find them in contempt, throw them in jail. Put them in there. The next day, when I came down, said, you keep us in here as long as you want. I still won't testify. Because if you were not willing or have the means to protect that person who was murdered, how are you going to protect us for? Here's the reality. In Wyandotte County, there is indeed a fear of witness tampering and of victim tampering. And for decades, we have known this, and for decades, nothing has been done. And here's the other part. We as the public safety, prosecutor's office, judges, police, we cannot resolve crime in this county by ourselves. We can't do it without you. We can't do it without the community. That case, that was a solid murder case with 4 witnesses, we had to plead down to a drug case. Why? Because I had no murder witness. This is not a matter of pleading cases down for the heck of it. This is a matter of doing whatever you can to try to bring about justice, yes, to the victim, but also to bring about safety to the community. And the fact is, if you can get an individual off the street for a little bit of time, it's better than no time. But we cannot do that without witnesses coming forward and without victims being willing to cooperate. One of the things that I did when I got in office was make sure that I personally met with every murdered victim's family. If you had a murder victim in your family, I sat down personally and continue to do with your entire family and answer questions. Now here's the thing. You may not like what I have to say, but I'm going to sit down and talk to you and explain the process. Why? Because I grew up here. And as a pastor, I dealt with individual families who were victims of crime and never got a contact, never got a call, and never sat down with the DA's office. And so they didn't know who was fighting for justice. We implemented that in there because every person, whether you are a victim of crime on First Street or a victim of crime out west, you still deserve to know that someone is fighting for your family. So what we have to do is continue to protect them as much as we can, while at the same time deal with the fact that there is real fear, and we have to learn how to help the community feel safe so that they can help us make the community safe.
Thank you for that. Our viewers on Facebook are saying that they are not hearing you clear on Facebook because of your mask. So I'm not suggesting that you do so. That's what they're saying. And so I just wanted to give that information to you. Kind of a follow-up to that is, I know you talk about witness tampering. That experience with our citizens in our community also.
Your mic is not on.
Can you hear me though? When you talk about witness tampering, I want to say that happens to individuals in our community. When we go and we turn somebody in for a violation, and somehow they have these connections at City Hall, where then you become the victim. And it happens over and over and over. It's a systematic problem that continues to happen at City Hall. You have people that are afraid to speak up and speak out. And because they feel that they're going to be tampered with the systematic tools that they use at City Hall. And believe it or not, it'll cross over into BPU. And I mean, you looked at it under a microscope, and it's happening on a daily basis. Pastor Jameson and I was talking about what can we do to combat that process, and he was like, hey, well, we're going to do an app, or we're going to do a website of some sort, and I'll let him talk about that. But all of us have experienced, all of us, a lot of people are experiencing this harassment that we get. They're messing with our taxes and increasing our taxes by 200% and you have to go and get an attorney to defend you, and you have to go and pay all this money just to get you back to where you were when there was no reason for doing it, but they're tampering with that process. So I don't know how we do this, how we might get about it, but I really hope and pray that that City Hall can be held to a certain standard. That there are certain things that are happening with our government that are criminal of how they treat our citizens and what they do. I know he told me to stay away from my personal issues, but I don't think that's a personal issue. That's a us issue that's happening to us in our community. Facebook question. One more follow-up to this right here. What services? I think someone mentioned this already, but it says, what services does public safety service provide for our community? So if we were going into a one-stop shop, what services could you render? I know you talked about, it was mentioned about victim of crimes, and I know we have some crime victims assistance in some sort of way if they were not, if they didn't participate in the process. So, but just give us an overview of what services that are available to our community from public service, public safety service.
So when we got into the administration, we wanted to focus in on providing those services that we could provide from the district attorney's office. Having grown up here, I had never met a lawyer or a judge in our community. And so at 14 years old, I was able to meet the late Cordell Meeks Jr., who was an African-American judge here. And that changed the trajectory of my life. And so what I did is, when I became an attorney, when I was even as a public defender, I would bring students of District 500 into the Wyandotte County District Attorney's Office to meet assistant district attorneys and to meet judges, to open their eyes to a reality that you do not have to be a criminal in the criminal justice system, but it could positively affect you. You could be the sheriff, you could be a judge, you could be the DA. And so even when I wasn't the DA, we did that because I believe the DA's office should be more than just reactive, it should be proactive. We shouldn't just wait for our young people to commit crime and then try to lock them up as long as they can. We should try to prevent them from coming into the system and stop the truancy or the school to prison pipeline that we know is serious. So what we did when we got in is create the BOLD Initiative, which is a youth mentoring program that allows my assistant district attorneys to go into the schools all over Wyandotte County, Turner, Bonner, Piper, District 500, and we mentor the young people and educate them on what they can be, doing mock trials. We're in the process of creating a youth court with Wyandotte High School to again show them and unveil them to opportunities of being involved in the criminal justice system in a positive way. We also created the Community Liaison Board, which is an organization that allows all demographics from First Street all the way out to Bonner Springs and Edwardsville to come into the DA's office once a quarter to sit down and talk with the DA in concern of what we're doing, but also the things that they believe would better affect public safety and hearing from them. We also created the Interfaith Liaison Board. Again, I believe that the persons who are closest to the problem are closest to the solution. And so we had to open that up to give them that opportunity. There are all kinds of services that are available for individuals. Of course, when you're dealing with the victims, you have not only our office, but the Topeka has all kinds of services that you can assist with. But you have to have a holistic view on what services we can give to the entire community, not just after they're in the criminal justice system.
Thank you.
And frankly, I think Wyandotte County is lacking in a cohesive effort to provide services for public safety to our citizens. I mean, some of these efforts are great. Intervening with kids is a positive touch in the community. But at the end of the day, we are not doing enough to work together and collaborate between public safety and the community. And I'm not talking about community boards where people come in and listen to you talk and tell them your ideas. I'm talking about actually talking to the people in our community who are impacted by crime, because they know who's pulling the trigger in their neighborhood, they know what's driving crime, but we are not, as public safety, talking to the people who are impacted, and that needs to change. And we need to get a cohesive effort together between law enforcement, prosecutors, and we have some great social service agencies here in our community who are doing wonderful things. But we need to bring everybody together under one umbrella so that we can get the community the service that they need. We need to make people feel safe. We need to make sure that they feel safe coming forward to law enforcement and that they're no longer terrified of the process of making a police report and coming to court and having a case filed. We need to work together to make the entire system more user-friendly, because when there is a breakdown in communication between agencies and service providers and educators, which exists right now, if you talk to people in the community, they know it's there and they will tell you. That means that we are not serving the community appropriately and we are less safe than we should be. And we really need, I mean, this is a time when we need to not divide. We need to come together and fix those fractures that exist in our current system and start taking steps forward as partners together and walk in the right direction to make our county safer overall, because I don't think the services we have are sufficient.
Thank you.
I want to say something. She just told me to step down, but I'm not. Listen, I'm listening to everything that's being said. For one, when so much crime is in our cities, my mother used to tell me that if you wanted to stop a plant from growing, to take care of it and pull it up from the root. So my thing is, when I was a kid growing up, they had a program called the Cedar Program. And what they did was, if you was 12 and up, they put you to work every summer. You had a job. So you can go out and buy them Dr. J's you wanted. You can go out and buy them things you wanted. They had a job. It was a program in our community called the Cedar Program. Now these programs that have been taken out of the communities need to come back to the communities, which will help stop half of the crimes that we have. Because our children are slinging dope at the ages of 12, 13, and 14 years old and carrying pistols now. We need to get them back to work. That's one thing. Second thing is, if you want people to tell and don't feel like snitches, put an app together that they can go in on Facebook or wherever and put it in without using their name and tell you where these killers are at, where these murderers are at. If you set it up to where it's easy for them to get in and put the information in, and even if you want to pay them or give them a code that they can be paid, that's fine too. But if you fix it up to where they will not be seen and can't be seen, you will get more out of them. But back to the babies, again, we need to start the Cedar programs back up. We need to start putting our kids back to work at 12, 13, 14, and 15 years old. Those programs kept our kids off the street. It kept me off the street. So they put you to work everywhere that's needed to be work. At the DA's office, in the courthouse, in all the systems. Again, that's what we need to do.
Can I say that there exists an app already that the Kansas City Metropolitan Crime Commission already has an app that you can download, and you can anonymously make it known who committed these crimes, and there are already funds that are available for you turning in those crimes, and you can pick up those funds anonymously without worrying about coming and getting caught up. And so it exists. We just need to push that out there more. And I will tell you that here in Wyandotte County, on our murders, we have a $2,000 fee, or not fee, but reward. And then you have another $5,000. I'll tell you that over in Johnson County and in Jackson, I think they just raised it up to about $10,000. And so I think if we're looking at really wanting to get some of these crimes dealt with, we need to raise the funds for what that award is. Because if we're talking about that every life is important, then if I'm going to help you solve this crime, and over here in Wyandotte County, you're getting $2,000, but if I was in Johnson, you're going to get $5,000 or $10,000. We need to change that, and that is something that is out of the hands of the DA's office, but it does exist with our City Hall, and so it does exist, and I think that the funding on it needs to be raised.
All right, thank you. Our next segment, we are trying to stay close to the time, and so rather than me ringing a bell, rather than me stopping you mid-sentence, I'll wave my little telephone, and you know that means your time is getting close. We're not gonna cut you off, but just wanna give you a notice so you can wrap it up. Okay, current state of Wyandotte County safety. Can you briefly discuss the current crime rate in Wyandotte County? That's
pretty much it, and the progression and regression is what the question was.
okay. Yeah, they stopped it. Can you briefly discuss the current crime rate in Wyandotte County and progression and regression of,
Throughout the years locally.
yes. So where are we, going up, going down, all around?
So when I got into office, we were having quite a few murders and crimes. And in 2018, 2019, according to the Kansas City, Kansas Police Department on their website and their study, it shows that we had a decrease in crime by 11%. And that we had less calls to the police as well as less crime that happened in 18 and 19. And in fact, the interim chief of police most recently to the task force on racial equality just showed a list where, again, that crime was down in that list, or that the calls for police help was down. And so, having said that, you know, we can shout numbers and we can say that the numbers are up and down. What we do know is that when a person is killed or murdered in this community, it doesn't matter what people are shouting numbers about. Because there are some numbers running around that nobody else has saw, but apparently they've been thrown out there, that crime is now super high and that murders are super high, and I'm just super happy I wasn't even mugged by coming down here. And so here's the reality. We have an issue in Wyandotte County that says we need people's help to resolve not some crime, but all crime. And the only way that we do that is by involving the community in resolving those crimes and getting the help that we need to deal with that. And so there has been a decrease since this administration occurred and continues to push that. And I believe that that decrease was because of our efforts in the community, working with the community organizations, talking to the community organizations, and making it easier for them to cooperate. We have multiple law enforcement agencies in this community who do everything that they can to try to resolve the crime in this community, and we have worked hand in hand with them to make sure, out of all of the thousands of cases that we deal with in the office, that we do what we can to resolve the cases. Do we win every case? No. If you have a prosecutor who says that they will win every case, it's a lie. The only way that we can make this community safe and continue to lower the crime rate is if we continue to work together. But that means everybody, not just some people. We have to make sure that law enforcement, that our policing agencies are communicating effectively with our community members, which means that there has to be a relationship. And look, I was born and raised here in this community. We cannot be quiet to the fact that there has been police corruption in our community and then turn around and say, why are the people not talking to the police? When we won't accept the reality that there has been a disconnect. It wasn't until this administration got into office until Detective Golubsky was looked at. He had been there for 30 years. This is something that the community knew, and so there was a fear of, if I come forward, nothing will be done because there will be home cooking to protect themselves. If we want to lower the crime rate, we must acknowledge where we are and then build on the reality of where our system is, and not this fictitious, everybody just needs to be kumbaya-ish.
Well, and unfortunately, the statistics that Mr. Dupree is citing for crime being down are from 2018. The chief of police testified before the Unified Government Commission on July 9 about violent crime and the issues that they're having and why the budget shortfall is significant to KCKPD. And at that time, he testified that in 2020, the homicide rate is up 160%. Our violent crime is up overall 12%. Shooting into an occupied vehicle is up 50%. That means drive-by shootings where children can be potentially victims. And also 70%, ag assaults are up 70%. Those are significant statistics. There's a variety of reasons why crime statistics go up. The pandemic seems to have had an impact in places, but there's also issues within our community. There's a couple of examples of cases. Dramel Byers was given a very low sentence by the district attorney's office. He turned around and murdered 2 people when he got out. Matthew West received a low sentence by the district attorney's office. A person crime was pled down to a drug offense. He got out and he murdered somebody. That is part of what is driving our violent crime rate in the city, and it needs to stop. For the people that live in Argentine, for example, they have had an outbreak of violent crime. They are having drive-by shootings in the middle of the day. And that puts everybody at risk. That puts our children at risk. That puts our families at risk. And when we see statistics like that, it should be shocking. And there is a component where people need to be safe, feel safe coming forward and reporting crime and cooperating. But the district attorney's office and law enforcement, they both play separate roles in that. We need to make sure we treat victims of crime with respect and that we communicate with them. We need to make sure that we subpoena witnesses in a timely fashion to come to court and let them know what's going on with their case. And all of those things have an impact on the crime rate. So while crime ebbs and flows, we should be concerned with where we are sitting right here, right now in 2020.
Thank you so much for that. Was there, I'm gonna let him rebuttal, but I wanna, go ahead, and I'll make a statement after that. You got two minutes.
Well, what I'll say is this, we can cherry pick all kinds of cases, and we can say that it was because this person was given a lower sentence that they went out and killed. Here's the reality. Miss Christiane signed a probation for someone by the last name of Quinn, who is now on Facebook talking about how he killed someone. 2014, her signature, get him out on probation. He goes out and he kills someone, and we try to prosecute him, and the witnesses wouldn't show up. It would be wrong for me to then say, Ms. Bryant, because you did what you thought was best on that case in 2014, that it was your first. You murdered that person. That's not okay, and that is very childish. It is very childish. It is very one-sided. It's not okay. The reality is that people who commit crime are the people who commit crime. And there is no serum or way you can just look at a person and determine if they're going to commit a crime. It's not. All you can do is handle each case by case. Right now in Kansas City, Missouri, there are federal agents over there because their murder rate is up by 35%. She's over the task force over there concerning their violent crime. I can't say it's your fault that all the murders are happening and the feds have to come in. It's ridiculous. We need to stop the bickering, the fighting, the division, and actually find a way to help our community. How can we resolve the crime? We can't do that if we have leaders who are so focused on fighting and tearing down one another than to really deal with the crime issue in our community.
Thank you for that. Turn your mic off. Okay. Thank you for that. I had earlier, we had several questions naming names on Facebook and asking about particular cases on Facebook. We're not dealing with that today. So let's stay away from that part of it. They asked a couple of things that I don't feel comfortable with getting off into the details. And this is not a finger pointing process. This is who I am, this is what I think, and we're gonna let people make their minds up from there. But when it comes to public safety, we want to know that we're safe, and we want to know how we're going to achieve some level of safety. We want to know what are your angles, what will you be doing different than we've done in the past to assure us some level of safety in our community. If you were to put a ring around the center point of our community, some call it the hood, some call it the urban core, some call it the inner city. If you were to throw a dart at the map, it would land at 13th and Quindaro. And we have moved that a little bit, and we find it out. We have trouble spots in Argentine. We have trouble spots in the Northeast. And guess what? That urban core, that inner city, that hood is expanding west. And if we don't do something about it now, we would brand our entire city as a hood. And we're gonna all be in. The only good part about the hood part is that hood is a good thing if we're all in the same hood. But when we have separation from down there to out there or over there, that creates a problem, and I hope that we can address that. And when we talk about systemic problems, systemic racism, it appears and it rears its ugly head in so many different ways. And we have so many tools that have aided with that. And you guys kind of mentioned some of those tools being utilized by people with unscrupulous ideas. And we're hoping that we can address that today. So, next, community engagement. Can you speak to a role of community engagement in law enforcement and the challenges present here in Wyandotte County that we face? Can you speak to a role of community engagement in law enforcement and the challenges that we are present here in Wyandotte County that we're facing right now? That was a question.
And I'm happy to start with that one. I think one of the challenges is that law enforcement, and I'm including prosecutors and police officers in that, are stuck in these traditional roles that I feel like are sort of 90s style roles, where instead of engaging the community, we like to tell the community what they need to do in order to reduce crime and in order to be safer. I think we need to reimagine what law enforcement looks like, and we need to do that with the community on board. Because frankly, what may work as a crime reduction strategy at 13th and Quindaro probably looks different than what works in Argentine, just because the community dynamic is a little bit different. And instead of looking at it globally, like we've historically done, and say, well, this is Wyandotte County, this is how we're gonna do things, I think we need to partner, first of all. We need to repair the relationships that have been fractured, because that is a problem. And partners don't always have to agree on every single thing, but they need to be walking in the same direction. And what that means is that police, prosecutors, the community, and our service providers need to start walking in the same direction together, and we need to legitimately collaborate with each area and figure out what we can do to drive down violent crime and also engage the community. And sometimes that means doing job fairs, thinking outside of the box, doing a big trash pickup, boarding up vacant houses and making sure that those are taken care of by the unified government, making sure that the grass is cut down, because that broken windows theory of crime is true, but that is a community by community strategy, so it's not one size fits all. And I really think that if we reimagine what we're doing and just get a blank slate and we look at everyone's role, we will be better moving forward. It is a lot of hard work, but it's worked in cities across the country like New Haven, Connecticut, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. They have driven down violent crime through community engagement and made their communities much safer, and I think we can do that here in Wyandotte County.
Thank you. So one of the things that we've done multiple things. We got into office, we looked at what traditionally was done, which was, quite frankly, concerning community engagement. It wasn't there. The DA's office was not in the community. They were not out talking to the children, except for in certain schools, and they definitely were not up here on 13th or 10th and Quindaro, okay? And so what we found is that we needed to be more involved in the community, so we got in contact with the schools, we got in contact with the community organizations, we got in contact with the churches, and all of my assistant district attorneys, we have engaged with the community organizations, and we've been to 200 plus, not only community organization events, but actually put on events to bring the community together, because unless there is a trust, then there will be no real communication. And here's the reality, our community members are the jury pool. And so the folks, when we arrest individuals, we charge them, and then we get them in the courtroom, that jury is going to be individuals who are out here in the community. And if the first time that they see the prosecutor or see that officer testifying is right there in the courtroom, then there's a disconnect. There has to be a relationship with the community members before we get to the courtroom. The other thing we did is created the expungement fair. And what is expungement? Expungement is by statute here in Kansas, if you have been convicted of a crime and then you've served your time, depending on what the crime was, 3 to 5 years after you have been released from parole or probation, you're then able to get your record cleared and erased off. What the numbers show is that if you have a criminal record, you are 80% less likely to get a call back from an employer. And so we created this expungement fair to say, look, this is the law, and you can have the opportunity to have your record expunged, thus giving individuals who committed crime in their past, whether it was a mistake or they were just foolish, but they served their time and they're back home, because over 90% of the individuals that we send to prison in our community and in this country, they're coming back home. Only that top 10% go away for life. So when they come back home, we need to make sure that there's a process so that they can be a part of the tax base rather than the tax burden. And so we created that expungement fair, and last year we did it. Over 200 individuals came, and over 100 of them were able to get their records expunged and are now moving on with their life. We're in the process right now, and I'm saying this because on the 10th, we're actually going to be meeting with individuals who want that expungement. You can contact my office right now at 913-573-2851. If you have a criminal record and you've served your time and you want to move on to provide for your family, contact us. We've connected with the Kansas Legal Services to provide that service to you to try to get it expunged so that you can, again, be a fully functioning member of this community. That's community engagement that we've done since I've been in office.
All right, thank you. We got several more items that we want to cover. The time is far spent. As a DA, how will you hold, I'm sorry, I did have one announcement. Pastor wanted me to say in particular that we did invite members of our public safety, City Hall. They were on the phone relentlessly trying to get City Hall to be a part of this so that we could expand on what public safety services would be available for our citizenry, what they're doing, what are the actual numbers, and of course, you can look around and they are not here.
Chief of Police.
Chief of Police was requested, the mayor was asking, county administrator, keep on, y'all. Who else? Was that?
Assistant County Administrator did give us resources to point community in direction to, Y'all, I know y'all talking about on the speed. We want to hear from the participants, and y'all will. But just so you know, the county administrator did give us resources that we will post on the church page for the police task force to point people in the direction of putting their comments online. One of the issues that we took with that was a lot of our members in the Northeast do not have access to something like that, or not willing to put their name and address and things like that on the task force website. And they gave us emails, and we will provide that to anyone who asks us. But some of these questions cannot be asked necessarily or answered by the DA's office, and law enforcement is needed in this conversation. So,
All right, thank you for that. You see, dog, so what's this say? The dog catcher refused to, no. I don't know who wrote that down. Anyway, as DA, how will you hold police accountable when they commit crimes against the public and or cover up crimes? How will you hold the police accountable when they commit crimes? And so I can elaborate on that, but
I think we got it.
you got the question, right?
Yeah, I think
all
we
right,
got it.
all right.
And so I will tell you what we've done. And what we've done is treat police officers and every other person in our community the same as we treat everyone else. There is no superiority. There is no because you are a police officer or because you have a certain label that you deserve to not be treated the same. Now that's in concern of committing crimes. I have been called a lot of names and I've been told a lot of things, but one that I have not been called is one who's gone soft on policing. And so with that in mind, when a police officer commits a crime, we will charge them just like we charge any other citizen. But with that in mind, if a police officer does what everybody else does, and if our office is not charging Johnny, then I'm not going to charge Officer Johnny. And I'm going to just be realistic. I was approached when I got into office. And when I was approached by this individual, who's the former chief, he said, the Fraternal Order of Police has a solid contract, and I cannot fire them unless there are certain rules according to this contract violated. And we have an agreement that I've had previously. This is the first 3 months in. If I come to you and I ask that charges are brought on certain officers, just know I don't care if you plea them down. I don't care if you give them a diversion. I don't care if you dismiss it later on. I just need them charged because that's the only way I can fire them without having to deal with arbitration. My response to that was, if there's not probable cause to charge the individual, I'm not going to charge Officer Johnny just because you want to fire him. If you want to fire him and go through the arbitration. And so it cuts on both sides. Being fair and just across the board means that you're not going to charge just because somebody want to put a target on your back or just because someone owes a favor. It means you treat the folks who are out there putting their lives on the line just like everybody else because they're citizens too. We may not agree all the time, but at the end of the day, the cases that we close because of that collaboration between law enforcement. But that's why I vowed never to take money from law enforcement and from the Fraternal Order of Police, because I believe there's a conflict. And that conflict is if the police are the ones who are paying for my campaign signs and are putting my signs up, when it's time to charge one of them, then there's going to be a question. Do I upset the Fraternal Order of Police and all of the ones who helped me get here? Or do I do what is right and just by the community? And so my answer is, I'm just and I'm fair across the board, and I avoid conflicts of taking funds from them all the way through every campaign.
Thank you.
I firmly believe that when individuals in positions of public trust, just like police, prosecutors, government officials, if they commit a crime, they deserve to be treated the same as anyone else who committed the same crime, because that's the way the law works, and that's what's fair, and that's what's just. Now, I do think when we're dealing with the issue of law enforcement misconduct, we need to open that process up to the public a little bit more in a way that we can do it within our ethical guidelines and restrictions as prosecutors. At the end of the day, if there is a case involving law enforcement misconduct that comes to the district attorney's office, once that evidence is received, that should be reviewed and a decision made as quickly as possible to make sure that justice is moving forward in the right direction, whether that is a decline on the case because there's insufficient evidence, or whether that case is charged. I also think that the public deserves to know, when we see these press conferences with officers charged, that's fair, the community should know what's going on. But I also think the community deserves to know the outcome. So if that case is pled down, or if there's diversion, or if there's a jury trial conviction, or if there's ultimately a dismissal, the community deserves to know the outcome of that case and what happened, because there shouldn't be this shroud of mystery around the outcome. One thing that I would like to improve upon, because the community is demanding transparency from law enforcement and from prosecutors right now, and that's completely fair. But one thing I think we could do to improve here in Wyandotte County is to outline the reasons for declining a charge, and also outline the outcome for the public and give them an opportunity to ask questions about that. It's only fair to, especially when there's a press conference, give the public all the information that we can so that they know and they can make their own decision. Because I think when there's distrust in law enforcement, it makes people less safe because it undermines their confidence in the system. And confidence is low. We need to do everything that we can as prosecutors to improve that.
All right, thank you for that. All right, we're running a little short of time here, but I want to say, can people that have grievances trust the district attorney will be able to protect and commit to when and where police trample on First Amendment rights, that you will not prosecute those charges? Can law enforcement commit to allowing those with grievances voice their dissatisfaction without retaliation?
That was a lot. I don't know if I caught all of it, but what I will say,
I'm going to read backwards. Can law enforcement commit to allowing those with grievances voice their dissatisfaction without retaliation? And so basically, it's individuals concerned about First Amendment's right. They're concerned about the right to go out and protest without retaliation, as we experienced over in Kansas City, Missouri, when individuals went out and protested. They were picked up and locked up and charged. And so they feel like they were being trampled on by
all right, I think I got it. So number one, our office has not charged any protester in Wyandotte County. We have not charged or been approached by the police department. In fact, I think I heard the chief of police, interim chief York, in his presentation say and give an applause to those who have been protesting in our community and how there has not been any violent act or any issues going on throughout the city. And so I think at the end of the day that if there's a crime that's committed, they can report that. But my understanding is there has not been, and pardon me for leaning forward, I'm trying to stop whatever this is happening. And so there hasn't been any of that here. What I will say is that most recently we've been approved unanimously for the funding of the Community Integrity Unit, which expands the Conviction Integrity Unit and allowing individuals who have complaints concerning officer involved issues, whether it is excessive force or rights being violated. Those things can be reported to the Community Integrity Unit, and that will be up and going come October.
And I also assume the question was focused on protests. I think we were very fortunate here in Kansas City, Kansas, that we had a great response from the community and a great response from law enforcement, so that the issues that occurred in Kansas City, Missouri didn't bleed over here, which is wonderful for our community. I know in Missouri there were some municipal charges filed, and those were eventually dismissed. And here we shouldn't be prosecuting individuals for protesting. And Mr. Dupree brought up the Community Integrity Unit as well, which I think that's a great forum for the public to be able to make complaints and reports. I do think that there is an issue with those complaints being made to the district attorney's office, as Mr. Dupree made the point that the district attorney's office relies on law enforcement to make their cases, and they rely on law enforcement investigations to charge. So I think that's a wonderful thing. I just don't know if that's maybe housed somewhere else more neutrally, but I do think it's incredibly important for our community to have a place to voice concerns where they can be analyzed neutrally and evaluated without the fear of reprisal from somewhere else.
Thank you. Do you believe racism in the that there's racism in the Kansas City, Kansas Police Department and the Wyandotte County criminal defense system, criminal justice system? And then what will you do as a leader to influence change in that area? So do you believe that there's racism in the Kansas City, Kansas Police Department? Do you think it exists there? And then, as a Wyandotte County criminal justice system, what will you do as a leader to influence change in that racism in our police department.
And I can address that. I firmly believe that there is racism everywhere. I think it exists in every agency of government and the way that it's structured. And it's a matter of how we choose to acknowledge it and address it moving forward. I think we've done a poor job of that historically. I think it is crystal clear that agencies, including the police department, the district attorney's office, our local government, and all other branches of government, need to take a real hard look. And I think one area that we can improve on, both in policing and in prosecution, is really working towards cultural competency and, just understanding everybody's background and who we are actually, in fact, working to serve. Because everybody comes to the table with some implicit bias. I mean, that is clear. It's just, your day is different than somebody else's, your life is different from somebody else's. So one thing that I've always felt is important is to make sure that we meet people where they're at. And in order to do so, you need to understand cultural competency and you need to acknowledge your own implicit bias. And I know as prosecutors, my office has required that training for several years now. I think law enforcement is moving in that direction, and that's absolutely where we need to go, is to make those programs mandatory in the academy phase and in yearly training. And everybody, we're never going to eliminate racism totally, but I think we can make steps to make huge improvements from where we're at now.
So one of the things that we did when we got into office back in 2017 was look at the reality of the office. There lacked diversity. There was another African-American attorney was hired on 3 months after, before I got in. But the majority of the attorneys in the office were Caucasian. Now, we just talked about how diverse our community is. I believe that your office should look like your community. That was not the case. That was not the case. And so what we did is we looked and we found prosecuting attorneys from across the country who wanted to come here to practice. And so we increased our diversity, ethnic diversity, racial diversity. We have 5 African Americans, we have Hispanic, we have Asian, we have Middle Eastern, and it's because our county is diverse and we should have diversity in the office. Why is that important? When we got there, there was a tradition, and that tradition was to pass around a Noose Award. And whenever an attorney in the office received a hung jury, they would put this Noose Award on your desk before you got back down. Well, we don't know how many years, we know it was for at least 5 years before I got there, but we don't know how many years before that it happened. And this was during the time as my challenger was there, and nobody found it repulsive enough to stop it. And so when we talk about cultural sensitivity, I am a firm believer that you cannot be culturally or legally competent as an attorney if you're not culturally competent. If you don't think that having a Noose Award running around shouldn't be stopped, there's a problem. One of the things that was said was, right now. Right now, everyone's demanding transparency. Right now, we need to be culturally sensitive. Right now is because George Floyd was murdered. What about before right now? I've been black in this country my whole life. And so the problems that we're talking about culturally, it's been here my whole life. It was there when she was in the office for 7 years and did nothing different. But right now, there is a push that says we must have change and we will demand it or else. And we have to do something. And so what have we done is call it out. Stop being all scared about it. Yes, there's racism in the Kansas City, Kansas Police Department. Yes, there's racism in our system in this county, but the problem is so many people who have come before me and who've been in this office before me have been afraid because they didn't want the target that I have on my back, and you see why they don't want it. But we have to be strong enough and stand on integrity to call it out, but don't just call it out let's do something different. So every attorney, every staff has done implicit bias because it is necessary. It's not just a trending thing to do. It's what should have been done before I got there, and we got rid of the Goose Award because it's the wrong thing to do.
Thank you so much. All right, this is kind of related. Please take 1 minute to answer this question, and we got to move on, and then we're going to move on to closing statements. All right? Will your office look like and reflect diversity, female? Will it reflect diversity? Period. Will your office reflect diversity? So, whoever want to go first on that?
Well, I think Mr. Dupree already answered this question.
Can I use that minute for another question then? No, go ahead.
Well, so on the last question, which wasn't about this, he answered that question. I think it's important to make sure that we can make the office reflect the community that it serves as much as we can. And that is important because it means a lot to the people that are served. I know historically it has been somewhat difficult to recruit and retain minority candidates because they're often highly sought after. They're talented, they get courtroom experience, and they go on to a higher paying job. Public service is difficult to maintain individuals in, but it's incredibly important. I also think we need to make sure that we have people in the office who are truly invested in Wyandotte County and who, live here, they want to work here, they want to be here, and the outcomes matter to them. But I think we need to make the office look like the community it serves as much as we can, with the understanding that we also need people who want to serve.
So yes, I think it should look, and I think that is extremely important across the board in any industry. What we just heard is usually said, that there are not a lot of African Americans who want to do this or not willing to serve. That's not true. There are African Americans and Hispanics who are great attorneys who want to come and who can come, but we have to make the environment where minorities want to come. If there's a noose award being pushed around as an African American, that has nothing with me being, I'm a great attorney, but I don't want to be in your office because we're not taking this thing serious. Not only do I think that my office should look like this, but I believe every office in this county should look like that. I believe the police department should look like this community, and it doesn't. I think that City Hall, our commissioners, I think that our judges should look like our community and be as diverse. And the thought process that, well, many, people of color don't want to come is just something that usually when you're not a person of color, you say so that you can feel comfortable talking about it. It's not true. We need to make the environment fit the place where people can come and feel comfortable coming.
Thank you. All right, we're going to entertain our closing statements, but before I do that, as a moderator, Ms. Bryant, did you feel comfortable coming here and you feel that everything's been done fairly for you? So we want to make certain that we treat everybody fairly, and we stayed away from trying to keep this from back and forth and favor this and favor that. We want to ask each one of you that you feel comfortable here in this debate, this forum.
Sure, I felt comfortable being at